We really made some great progress today.
I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace.
After some strong talk that he wanted a ceasefire in Ukraine agreed upon today, President Trump, as you heard, said he is nevertheless happy with the progress made towards one, even as no agreement has been reached yet. Thank you for joining us here for the Fox 61 News at 10 o'clock. I'm Tim Lammers. Now, today's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska was likely not going to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, at the very least because Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky wasn't even a part of the discussion. But what progress was made? While public details are still sparse, Putin said an understanding was reached, while President Trump said there are still points that need to be agreed on. Here's Connor Hansen with more.
Talks between President Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin lasted for nearly 3 hours. The two leaders agreed they'd like to stop the fighting in Ukraine and restore Russia-U.S. relations, but there was no mention specifically of an immediate ceasefire. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin began their high-stakes summit with a handshake, but ended without a ceasefire in Ukraine.
I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them.
We need to eliminate all the primary causes of that conflict and agree with President Trump that, naturally, the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well.
After greeting one another at Elmendorf Air Force Base, the two leaders took President Trump's limo to the summit site where they spoke for more than 2.5 hours. President Trump says he wouldn't accept anything less than a ceasefire during Friday's talks. To end the fighting, Moscow has called for an end to Western weapons shipments to Ukraine and demanded Kyiv give up territory as part of any potential peace deal.
There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway.
Trump suggested there will likely have to be some give and take on boundaries, but Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says Ukraine won't give up any territory captured by Russia during the war.
We hope for a strong position from the U.S. Everything will depend on this. The Russians respect American strength alone.
There was no word on a second meeting involving Zelensky, though President Trump said he'd be calling him shortly after the summit. Both Trump and Putin suggested they would be speaking again soon, Putin even inviting Trump to visit Russia. In Anchorage, Alaska, Connor Hansen, Fox 61.
Oh, Connor, thank you. All right, so the question is, who got more out of the meeting, or at least got what they wanted? We spoke with Matthew Schmidt, a foreign affairs expert and professor at the University of New Haven. He specializes in Russia and Ukraine. He said, in a way, Putin got a win before the talks even started.
It was a huge win for Putin, and Trump knew it. If you looked at his body language when he came out for that press conference, he looked sullen. Symbolically, this was a huge win to do it in Alaska. The Russians call it Russian America, which evokes the idea of Russia and Ukraine, which was all over the Russian press. Putin got what he wanted here, which is that he came off as the person in charge.
Well, just days ago, Trump said Russia would face, quote, very severe consequences, end quote, if Russia wasn't serious about trying to end the war. Well, Professor Schmidt said the president not mentioning any consequences in the post-summit press conference was, in his words, a glaring silence.
He sees an advantage to snubbing him. The story that Putin tells himself, and critically the story that he sells to his population in order to support the war, is that it's not really a war with Ukraine, that Ukraine is a proxy for the West, and therefore his attention should be with the leader of the West, right, the president of the United States, and not Zelensky. And he doesn't want to put Zelensky on that podium with him as a kind of equal.
Well, we do have full coverage of today's historic event on Fox61.com and on the free Fox 61 News app.